Right, everyone, let's talk some tactics. We've got Jordan and Matt here, got the board up, and we are reacting to preseason friendlies, which we've just had any of, and Paul Ince's new shape. Jordan, do you want to lead us in?
Sure. So we've seen a couple of different shapes. I think today we're probably going to focus more on the two different variations of the back three. What we've got up on the board at the moment is the 3-2-2-2-2-2-2-1, whatever we want to call it. I call it a 3-4-2-1. I've seen some people call it a 2-2-1 at the end and stuff like that. I'm going to call it a 3-4-2-1. And it is three centre backs, wing backs, two pivots, we'll call them, and then it's a pair of tens in Jari and Ince. And then we've obviously got our lone man up front. We've also seen, and we'll touch on the differences, we've also seen a variation, which is just a three in midfield and two up top. But yeah, it's been fun seeing something a bit different from Paul Ince. But some of the same bits and pieces that we saw from him last season have carried through. One of them being positioning of his wide players. Last season it was wingers. This season, so far, it's been wing backs. The position of Hoylett and Yeardom has been exceptionally high up the pitch. Basically, whenever we've got the ball, anytime the ball's like anywhere in the back line, Hoylett is positioned exactly where he would be if he was playing left wing, which is a bit jarring. It leaves quite a lot of space. It leaves conundrums of how do you get the ball up to him. But we seemingly are quite keen to hold that width that we talked about it on the last tactics pod, right, Matt, in terms of Paul Ince wants players super wide, holding that width, stretching the pitch basically. And we've seen plenty of that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say it's quite old fashioned, but in a way it is. There's not a lot of teams that, even with wingbacks, sort of, a lot of teams have wingbacks kind of more attacking the box, like they almost, calling them inside forwards is not right, but they're always trying to target the center of the pitch. But as you say, Hoylett's out wide, Yeardom's out wide. We saw in one of the games last season, Yeardom got the ball up here and he crossed it back post to Zhao to head in. And I feel like we'll see that goal or that type of goal a lot more this season. It is definitely get it wide and get it in the box. We've not had a lot of success with it yet. Obviously, Shane Long scored in the... No, he didn't. Yaku Mete scored in the West Ham game off a cutback. And then that's about all that's happened so far. But it does seem to be the general tactic. Ejaria and Tom Ince kind of, the idea is that they hang around Zhao and then they can create from here. Zhao can make runs anywhere and do tens can get him the ball. I don't think we've seen that work too well yet. The thing that has worked quite nicely is Jeff Hendrick getting the ball. And he is very good at progressing the ball forward between the lines, or even if Hutchinson's got it, Hendrick and Forner, they always offer options. I feel like we'll get the ball from the back line into at least midfield stage one a lot better. Whether we can progress it past there, I'm not quite sure yet.
But like, just to call on the picture here though, like it is those back five, right, that are basically doing that work, because that front five is fairly set forward. So there is a lot of onus on somebody in those five finding that pass. And you'd think, Kyle, like when you look at those five at the back there, right? We don't know that much about Fornar yet, although some of the signs and some of the reviews we've heard are positive. There seems to be enough players in there that have a pass in them, and we haven't always been able to say that about Reading, either centre backs or Reading midfielders last season, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the key for this in terms of progression is it's slow progression. This is not a lightning fast counting team, because there just aren't the player profiles for it. You've got Hoylett and Yeardom on the wing. You aren't just pumping up to them to gas outside the opposition fullbacks.
Yeah,
it's very much a let's move people into position like a chessboard. Let's get Yidom up because then he needs Tom Ince next to him because Yidom's not the kind of guy to drop a shoulder and get past the fullback. He needs Tom Ince in half space to help out. Likewise, Hoylett and Ajaria, and Hoylett just doesn't have the legs at this stage to. He's got great cross on him, but he's not going to be carrying the ball 40, 50 yards by himself.
No.
So like I said, this formation is great. And the issue we saw against admittedly superior opponents in West Ham and Brighton was getting to this position because obviously it requires slow but safe progression of the ball. Because obviously if you lose the ball while it's happening, you still got quite a lot of men back, to be fair. But outside, the opposition wingers, there's potential for counters.
Well, yeah, and one of the things we saw, especially in that Brighton game, was us getting hemmed in at the back. And like Hoylett and Yiadom really did drop in to form a back five. Tom Ince and Ajaria kind of a flat four. And then Jav just got out-muscled by the Brighton defence. And
or Meite on the day. But, which is even less likely to probably hold up the ball by himself up top, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because Meite, you think of him as a very good header, aerial ability, but he just wasn't even getting near the ball when he went to head it. It's
too used to bullying fullbacks.
Well, I think that is part of it. Like,
to be fair, he was up against Lewis Dunk, who I do rate quite highly, especially in the air.
Yeah.
And he had, and the problem was that it was balls from deep where he's got no one to head it down to or anything, and it's
and the issue, as you can see, is like Zhao or Meite on the day just gets very isolated, and I think that's part of the reason we're probably not going to see Shane Long play up top by himself too much. He can do the running, but he really needs someone alongside him. There is obviously a couple of variations to this shape. So we were set up in this, as Jordan did, a 3-4-2-1. One of the variations which we haven't actually talked about is we can just push these guys wider. And we don't actually have a Guinness Walker on our tactics board, but Hoylett just comes up here, plays on left wing, and we have, well, we'll need another centre back.
You need another man,
yeah. But we'll call this guy McIntyre. He's Guinness Walker for now. But it turns into a more typical 3-4-3, I guess.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that does lead to Hoylett and Ince coming quite narrow again. Like their role doesn't change too much. Their starting position changes a bit more. And then you still have Yiadom coming up. You still got McIntyre. So effectively, the shape ends up being the same. But as Calum said, like the profile of player being slightly different means that you get slightly different outcomes.
Actually, to touch on that setup, because that is the setup that we scored. The goal from at Wimbledon was we'd already switched to this sort of slightly wider system. And I won't go into this in too much detail because there's a good thread. I think it's a good thread because I wrote it. A good thread on this on our Twitter account where you'd had Tom Ince on one side, keeping really wide, and Yiadom had tucked in. The opposite winger, we'll call it in Hoylett, had tucked in, and that had let the left wing back stay really wide. And it seems ridiculous using Dan for this analogy, but it had McIntyre as the left centre back hitting this space here. So you're right. Personnel is going to affect it. How we actually ask the players to go out and what positions we want them in is going to affect it. But there is flexibility within the setup to get different players in different positions to cause hopefully different problems to different opposition, right?
Yeah, and we should probably just quickly mention, if I take Scott Dan back out and add, McIntyre back into defence and Hoylett here, too much to keep track of. But one of the things that we were really seeing, we're down a man again because Ajaria should be on, was McIntyre on the overlap, but a lot of the time Hoylett would keep wide and McIntyre would hit this half space even then. Especially at Wimbledon, a little bit against Brighton as well, although we didn't really get the ball forward that much. It does seem that one of the ways that they've decided to inject threat is to have this like late run from McIntyre. And Hendrick can also do something kind of similar. He also makes late runs into the box, but because he's sort of tracked more by midfielders, it's not quite as effective. I think we haven't seen the McIntyre third man run work perfectly yet because he hasn't quite got the crosses right. But it's an interesting setup to have anyway.
Sorry,
I was going to say I was saying you're doing him a disservice because that was how he scored against West Ham. Across from Mate.
It was his cutback for Mate.
Yeah,
the first example. The first example in all of pre-season, and then we did it a lot in the next game.
Yeah. But what I was mainly going to say was if we go back to so we've got this. Mm-hmm. So if we go back to where they were quite high up and we're in kind of the attacking position, my worry is the profiles for getting the box because you think simple maths, you need players in the box to score goals.
Yes.
Obviously, you've got Zhao there. He's not always reliable for getting in the box because he kind of he lingers around doing his own thing and he wants double to feet, etc., etc. But anyways, say he's there anyway. Ajaria as a 10 isn't that man. He's more likely to stay outside the box to kind of think it back post, kind of get involved in build up. Ince is kind of similar. He's a bit
slightly
more
better.
He's slightly better getting in the box.
A bit better, but I agree. He still wants to be around it.
So he's still there. So one thing that was I saw Hendrick making a couple of runs into the box, kind of a late run, and then you're kind of okay because you've still got the players covering. Because if Ajari's not in the box, then he can help with the counters, got to centre backs, etc. Hendrick's a bit of an aerial threat, a bit of a goal threat. We don't mind that. But I just worry because I don't necessarily see where the goals come from in this setup. Because I know you said, Matt, you talk about Yedom crossing. I don't know if crossing's his best. Actually, especially he's not a back post crosser from wide.
It's like a Chris Gunter cross, isn't it? He stands it up.
And exactly. Yeah, or a lot of time it just doesn't make it to the back post. Yeah. If he's making the run at pace, he'll just kind of stab it in on the floor, which means.
Well, there's a big reliance on Hendricks. There's a big reliance on Hendricks.
Exactly, and I just don't think. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think Hoylett's attacking the box. I don't think Yedom's attacking the box that much. I worry.
I'll go on record on here and saying Yedom's going to score more than twice this season. But I agree, it's not a reliable goal threat. But I think he'll score at least 2+ this season.
It's been interesting because, like, Yedom has been making, like, say Ajara's got the ball over here. Yedom makes this run in, like, a lot more than Hoylett makes it. And to come back to Calum's point slightly, like, there was a time in Brighton where I don't think it was Hoylett, but it was someone had the ball on the edge of the box. And like Zhao was nowhere. Ajaria deliberately went for the pullback here.
Oh, he holds back.
Yeah, he holds back, and like I think it is Tom Ince, and he's just late to the back post. And
and we were screaming it.
Yeah, you end up with this where it's like we've got the ball in the box, and yet the only guy, like, there's still no option. Like
exactly. The easiest goal to score is a tapping from 2 yards out, but you have to stand there. You have to be there. That's why like Raheem Sterling gets so many goals because he's not a great finisher. But he's there time after time, which is what it's what Mate does as well. To be honest, he's a movement player rather than a great finisher,
and that's how Mate scored that goal against West Ham.
So let's talk about Mate because up to now we are talking about playing a setup that doesn't include, let's call him our second biggest goal threat. I think that's fairly straightforward. So the other setup that we've seen is we sacrifice one of these midfielders. We'll drop Fornah for this example, but we have seen him fill in at that deep position. Ajaria and Ince drop from what we were been calling 2 10s to 2 8s either side of Hendrick, and then we bring in another striker. Now, obviously, you've now got 2 goal scorers on the pitch. It is going to have more threat. This midfield does look light. There are good things about this midfield as well, because I do think I don't think we're gonna see the assist and goal output that we want from Ajaria, but what he is a player that I think could still be a massive asset for this season is taking the ball from sort of here to here, and also helping with those overloads with your wing backs and maybe even your centre back charging through. He's going to be, I think, really useful there. And then we've seen enough from Tom Ince, both in pre-season and midfield, and then last season playing right mid, that we know that he is a guy that can carry the ball over distances and bring us up the pitch. But it is a lightweight midfield 3. And I think, to be honest, we've just talked about Hendrick being hopefully one of our more reliable box entry players. Now, maybe if you're playing Mate, it's not as critical that he does that. But either way, you're saying, Hendrick, are you going to be the guy to sit?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe a Fornah or a Loom, if the guy comes in, would maybe fill that role instead. But this does cause different problems. you've now got somebody to occupy this space as a Mate runs in behind. You've also got guys to run channels a bit better as well. If we're deep in and we're looking for an out ball, Xiao's not going to do it, but Mate probably will run a channel for you. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it's probably going to be a case of horses for courses, as well as who's fit and available. But it'll be interesting to see which of those two setups, or three we've talked about, where they lean for different games, really.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think, like I said, the crucial thing about this is it gets the second goal scorer in the team. Whether it's because you could also swap out Mate for Aziz, Long, vice versa. I think we've got enough forwards that don't. So either I want Paul Ince to slightly tweak the 5-2-2-1 so that either Ajara Ince goes from the 10 position and you get Aziz or a Mate in there, or someone else who can score a goal. Because the issue with the balance of that formation is you've got so many ball to feet players. Not the one, because Mate is good because he runs away from the ball. It's like against at Wimbledon. His goal came because he ran away from the ball, gets it behind, etc., etc. And that's how you get goals. And it's how you stretch teams, and it's how you need that balance of away from the ball and to the ball players. I think with the fullbacks as well, like I said, Yidom is starting to get a bit better as well, as running away from the ball in behind. Mm-hmm. But again, is he the guy you want at the end of your Ajara through ball? If he's running kind of wide, and maybe Ince is playing out to him, I worry about what exactly Yidom can do with the ball from here, because
he tends to cut in, doesn't he?
Exactly.
He's heading back in field, isn't he? For sure.
Yeah, he's not going outside. I don't see him going outside and sticking it back post for a perfect cross. But yeah, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, the interesting thing about that Wimbledon game is that, yes, Mate did score, and it was kind of like Zhao flicking it onto Mate on his left foot and just finishes like we know Mate can. But the issue is when they get the other way round and the ball ends up on Mate's right foot, and he just does not want to shoot in that situation, even if he's in a really good position.
Yeah. And
when you start him from wide right, he never encounters that problem because he's always going to be on his left foot. I think we'll see some quite frustrating Mate, maybe even performances this year, where he really should get more goals than he does because he just doesn't trust his right, and that's probably fine, because like I don't see how else you fit him into this formation and even like others. And you do want him on the pitch sometimes, but I think people have to bear in mind that he does have his faults as well as his.
What's interesting about that as well, and this might be a reach from me, but one thing I noticed was that the simple solution in theory, right, to that problem is we'll just always have them like this, right? Like always have them with Mate favouring this side, right? But actually, I think one of the things we've seen is that when this setup gets forced very deep, right? Wing backs really get pushed back. They don't just settle for leaving the two up top all the time. So one of the things we've also seen is that this can tend to flatten. And typically how I've noticed it flatten is this, and Mate will come and fill in this position. Now, he probably won't be as deep as in, so probably be more here, but he fills in at like a left mid, rather than like the inverse would be Ajari is there. And I think when you put it together, you can kind of see why, right? Because that is the exact same set of four players. But in my mind, I look at that and I go, that is a weaker defensive setup than literally just shifting them along.
Yeah.
But it does lead to that problem of Mate spending more time in this sort of channel where you agree he's weaker than you'd otherwise want from an attacking point of view.
Well, and the thing is, like, they definitely see Ovi as a better defensive player than like Tom Ince, for example, because when McIntyre makes these runs, Ovi is the one that he doesn't quite drop all the way in, because Holmes kind of shuffles over, Hutchinson shuffles over, but Ovi is the one that holds more even than kind of Hendrick some of the time. So I think we're going to see Ovi make some tasty challenges this season as well. And I would not be surprised to see him get a red card lunging at a last man ball, because he's ended up in this kind of position. I think. Yeah,
and I definitely agree. And I think the reason why Ajara ends up deeper than the Hoyler or the McIntyre, and I think there's a reason why we'll go down the left more, is because he's comfortable going outside or inside, which I don't think Ince is, because he's so one-footed. he won't go outside. He'll always turn in, whereas Ajay could do a bit more of both. Ajay is just a more safer player for possession in terms of progressing the ball. Ajay at his best, he comes out with 90-95% pass completion rates. When he's at his best, he doesn't get tackled. And I know it doesn't always lead to goals and assists, but what it does mean is that Hoylett can make runs upfield knowing that Ajay is going to find him, knowing that Ajay is not going to lose the ball when McIntyre's up there and they're there and we're going to get countered.
Well, but
he is very good at intercepting as well. I think that's something that probably people outside of Reading don't necessarily appreciate or recognize in his game, is that he's very good at intercepting.
Because his legs are massive. They are one of his best attributes.
Well, but my worry in this scenario where Ovi has the ball kind of deep is that we have seen him do that before and we've seen him do it very well. But Omar Richards was always here. He never was up here. He always was offering a pass to Ovi that 9 times out of 10 he took. And I don't think we've ever seen Ovi have to like beat the press and then go forward that much. That's what worries me a little bit of saying that he's done this before. I mean, in theory he has, but it's still a slightly different role to what he will probably end up doing this year, because Hutchinson is not going to play 1-2s with him in the same way that Richards did.
I agree, and that's why, and that's the difference I think between Ajay playing left mid and playing centre mid. So I think at centre mid, the most important thing for a player is you can't have 4 out of 10 game. If you're a centre mid that plays 6 out of 10 games week in, week out, like Arena Motto, for example, that's perfect, because if you have a bad game in centre mid there, it can really hurt the team. It can really hurt the floor of the team. You can give the ball away and we concede, like he did against Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? He doesn't have the options that he used to, and that leads to him holding on the ball too long and losing it. Like, I think that Hoylett, and this is kind of where we come back to like Hoylett not being a good left wing back option. Hoylett has to go early, because otherwise he is not going to get up the pitch. Like,
totally.
Like he absolutely does. Otherwise, like this left hand space, which I'm indicating with my mouse, you can't see over here, like is just going to be empty if Hoylett doesn't go immediately. So he does have to set off quite soon. And Yeardom can kind of get away with it because he's more mobile, but it's going to leave gaps that. That Ovi would rather there be a player in, and therefore I think we are going to see Ovi lose the ball a bit in those situations. Hopefully he will get more used to having to play the ball to someone that he doesn't necessarily trust as much. Like Hutchinson can just clear the ball down. I mean, that's where Ate's goal at Wimbledon came from. Was just Hutchinson kicking the ball as far as he can.
Yeah, go on, John.
Go for it. I was just going to say, like, hopefully, you're right. I think Hoylett is going to be up here, and even if it's, I think, like, Ince has shown so far, like, you're right. Yeardom doesn't need to do it as much, but he still is, right? And actually, slightly separate topic, but I think that is actually robbing us of one of Yeardom's best qualities, which is carrying the ball up quite a long way. But either way, his age, maybe means we don't want to have to rely on doing that all the time. But I guess the hope is that more of the time, we didn't see this at Brighton because we were always scrambling, but more of the time in semi-safer positions, you're going to have, even if you're playing him in this 3, you're going to have, Tom Ince is probably going to be cheating a little bit and trying to get up there, but you'll have McIntyre going here, and hopefully João will be dropping like he wants to do, and you'll have enough triangles that you can play out. It's more when he's scrambling, and you're going, he's looking for options, and he's got 3 men around him, and he's always going to back himself, and then he can lose it, right?
Yeah, because like we saw Brighton do this shape a lot, kind of Kukurea coming out to the left, and then Lamptey pushing all the way up, and we were starting to do that, I think, a bit more in the second half, and it's nice to see us kind of maybe try and figure out those problems in real time. I mean, the only other formation we've seen is a 4-3-3. I don't think there's much point touching on that because we're not going to play it presumably for the first game, especially if we're signing yet more defenders.
What I was just going to say about the 4-3-3, with what you were saying about Ajay, Matt, do you think he'd work better in, say, if we move this to a 4-3-3, 4 hours beholder, say Ajay, Hendrick, McIntyre left back, you go a bit deeper. Do you think Ajay would then be better with someone like with Hoylett kind of already ahead of him? because then he's
changes
got
things materially, does it?
I think it's the
Well,
same issue.
no, but I think
Yeah.
you've got kind of a higher starting point. Like you've got.
But if
that
we're
needs him
talking
to
about,
get it higher, though. That
Yeah.
needs him to actually receive it, because you're right. In theory, he's receiving it here, but that's the crucial bit, right?
No.
If he is receiving it there rather than here, because otherwise he's in the same midfield 3 setup.
But he's got Hoylett already ahead of him.
well, so
And
my
He does.
McIntyre.
We're talking about Hoylett already being ahead of him.
Yeah, but I mean, we know what.
how many times do you see Ovi progress the ball? Like, so he will play lovely through balls. He does that really well. But how many times do you actually see him take the ball, turn, and pass forward through lines and not a through ball? I know I've complicated that unnecessarily, but I cannot remember Ovi playing many of those passes. I just don't think he does it. Like, he would much rather take the safe option and pass it inside or backwards and keep possession, and that's where slowing the ball down starts, because he's not the player to just quickly ping it forward. He kind of plays it from this inside channel across. He does that a few times.
Yeah,
but here
we saw that a bit at Benfica.
Yeah.
That pass from where he is right now through to Ince there on the counter attack.
Yeah.
He had Aziz wide.
Yeah.
We saw that a bit.
I don't.
But that
think...
pass is still theoretically possible when you're playing a back 3, because you're still going to have Ince there. You're still going to have, it's going to be Yedem at this point, but you're still going to have somebody there. So I don't necessarily know that it materially changes the positions all that much.
No, I just think that I know that people would love for Ovi to be that player. Ovi is not that player in this situation. It's either Forner or, more likely, it's Hendrick. Hendrick is the one that's going to be breaking lines with passes. We've seen him do it quite a lot in preseason already. I think that Ovi is going to be tasked with probably keeping the ball, like probably being the first pass. So if we are in this flat formation here, and let's just say Mate's hanging around, if Ovi gets the ball, that gives everyone else time to set up. I think I mentioned it in the last one where Pep Guardiola says, like, you need a certain number of passes before you can get set and go into it, the attacking phase. Ovi kind of offers us. Ovi skips some of the passes because Ovi skips some of the passes out because he will just hold it really well and allow others to move around him. I think that should be his role in this system. He's almost irrelevant once we're in this shape, because then it's Hendrick, and sure, Ovi can get up here and Tom Ince can get up here.
Once we get to that final third, he kind of becomes a player again.
Yeah.
But he's not really a player in transition, is he? Because he doesn't transition.
He's slow.
He transitions very well in the one and only situation that he's the first pass on the break when nobody is coming to close him down quickly, and he can play passes like he did for George Puskas at QPR. Like that through ball. That is the one time when he's very good in transition. Other than that, he is not very good at it.
He can't carry it.
Or if he's literally the man that makes the interception. Because I'm thinking that was that QPR one too. And I remember the Fulham away on New Year's Day when he literally intercepted the pass and then played it to Swift. And talking of Swift,
even that, right? Because that's not him progressing the ball. That is him winning the ball and giving it to someone else very quickly and letting them do all that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another one where Ajay is a player that he works best when he's got friends. And then in terms of, players like him, like Swift, Elise, where they would play the 1-2s and they would trust each other. And it was with a player like, I don't think he's doing it with Tom Ince, for example. I don't think he's doing it with Forner, because they're not on the wavelength maybe yet, or they haven't got the technical ability, etc.
I can see that coming though. I think we saw little signs of that with Hendrick. I think hopefully we'll see signs of that with Forner, where we saw little situations where Ajay would have it sort of fairly flat, drop it off to Hendrick, make a run, and we'd see him pick up that ball because he can run off the ball okay. So we saw little bits of like those sort of just quite fairly simple 1-2 moves, right? And I do think, unlike all due respect to them, Laurent and Rinomota last season, I do think the early signs we've seen from Hendrick and Forner will be that they will take it, they'll take a touch, they'll drop it off, right? Or even first time as you. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some of that, but I agree it's on a different level to Swift, the Omar Richard, the Elises.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to not necessarily last thing, but I want to touch on was because I think we all agree that Hoylett's not making 90 minutes in Blackpool or any game, especially with 5 subs. It's not needed. So if we swap him out for currently the backup left wing back, assuming because Guinness Walker at this point hasn't signed, so he can't play against Blackpool, we then got Aziz. I quite like because again he's another potential goal scorer in the team, and I think, like you said, I think at the start, Matt, he actually will make some box runs, as in he'll be attacking like a left forward, like Yidom kind of does on the other side, more off the ball running.
It's interesting because I don't think we saw that too much at Wimbledon. I actually think he held width more at Wimbledon and let McIntyre make that run inside him. But I think that you're right, he has more potential at least to make those runs. Because I would say Hoylett as a left winger also can cut inside. It's just they seem to have actually been told. I mean, maybe this is a deliberate ploy, like get it wide on the left and then yet Yeardom make those runs into the box. But
it just seems quite long-winded.
5 yards. They're trying to buy him 5 yards so he can do his classic thing of take one touch inside, trying to hit that back post.
Yeah.
And I agree.
It's
not ideal. It's not ideal that the back post is probably going to be Yeardom in that situation. But I think that is where they're using. Cool. So I mean, we obviously don't know everything about these setups. We've only really seen each one of them kind of once, really, or in different phases of games. It'll be really interesting to see how they develop as the season goes, and we'll definitely be back for another tactics talk at some point to see how these develop, how they develop with new people involved in them. I'm sure, and where we see them being successful, where we see issues with them. But yeah, we'll dive into that more. Future tactics talks.
Wait, last thing, do we think they'll be successful?
Oh, that's too big. That's too big as the topic.
Well, look, we're here. We're talking to make opinions.
Well, what I will say, and this is how I will deem success, is that they're interesting enough to talk about in this format. Which I couldn't say that for some of the stuff we saw last season from Ince. So that is encouraging, at least to me, that they're interesting enough to talk about.
I think that there's potential for a lot of holes in them that will get found out quite quickly. But equally, as Jordan says, they are interesting, and I would hope that we would then come up with our own solutions to those.
Yeah, it goes with. I feel like we've been talking about it now with no opposition players on the pitch. Mm-hmm. So and as the old saying goes, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops mid game and as well the first couple of games, as like you said, as people find solutions to our attacks and adapt. We're interested with that. But interesting.
Cool. Bye.